It's one way to start a seminar. Never happened to me before, but it's interesting. The seminar is organized by the Vaknin Rangelovska Foundation. Vaknin is me. Rangelovska is what is left of my wife after 27 years with me. So we are together. We have established this foundation, and this foundation will give grants to people who wish to continue my work in psychology, in physics, in economics. So the grant application process is open. The foundation has a sizable endowment, so the grants would be nice. Those of you who wish to visit the website, recommend it to others, and so on and so forth. Those of you who find some interest in my work in psychology or physics or economics, you're invited to apply on condition that you possess an academic degree in the field, of course, because my work is a bit advanced. And if you don't possess an academic degree, you'd have difficulty to understand the nuances and intricacies of some of the work. Yeah? Here we have the long-suffering lawyers, Terpenovsky Law Office, and they are the midwives. They brought this baby, this foundation into the world extremely patiently. To work with me is not an easy thing, believe me. But here we are. There is a foundation, and we are good to go. And we are launching the foundation, in effect, with this seminar. So, without further ado, I will get to the point. You didn't come here to hear about the foundation, I suspect. You came here to discuss narcissism. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, a few procedural points. I know that many of you fall asleep to my voice. Do not dare to do it here. There will be repercussions. So, and the second thing is, I know that many of you are obsessed with my hair. So here it is. I mean, live. You can't touch it, but you can definitely look at it as long as you wish. At least get something out of this seminar. Yeah? Okay. One last thing. In this seminar, I'm going to use, I don't think that these two go well together. Okay. In this seminar, I'm going to use the N-word a lot. Americans would appreciate it. The N-word is narcissist, not what you're thinking. Get your minds out of the gutter. Narcissist. So there'll be a lot of use of the N-word. But the seminar is concerned not with narcissism, or not mainly with narcissism, but with the victims of narcissism, or the survivors of narcissistic abuse, or whatever the designation is. People who have been exposed to narcissists. And I'm using the word exposure because narcissism is a contagion, and it has many, many epidemiological dimensions. In other words, it's very reminiscent to a viral disease, in effect. And I'm not demonizing narcissists here. By the way, generally speaking, mental illness is contagious. We have a series of studies, most recently in schools, I think in Netherlands, I'm not quite sure, where when they introduced a single diagnosed boy or girl into a classroom, about half the classroom developed mental health symptoms within a few weeks. Diagnosable mental health symptoms. Like everything else in human life, our states of mind are contagious, are communicable. And we say communicable disease, yes? So we're going to discuss people exposed to narcissists. The exposure could be as short as 30 seconds. Actually, there have been quite a few studies where people have been exposed to a photograph of a narcissist, to a recording, audio recording of a narcissist, to a video as short as 30 seconds. And these people reacted with extreme discomfort and what we call the uncanny valley reaction. So even minimal exposure has an impact. Of course, the impact, if you're exposed to a narcissist, lucky enough to be exposed to a narcissist for 30 seconds, the impact is passing. But what if you're exposed to a narcissist for 30 months, or let alone 30 years? This is the topic of the seminar. Evidence-based, science-based research into the impacts that pathological narcissism has on the narcissist's human milieu, human environment, nearest and never dearest. So, but we can't go there, we can't reach this stage, we can't have this conversation until we have perused pathological narcissism in general and the way the narcissist relates to people, interpersonal relationships, something known as the shared fantasy. So here is the structure of the seminar. We're going to start today with a single lecture which deals with what we know about pathological narcissism. Tomorrow, we're going to dedicate half a day to the shared fantasy. We're going to go very deep into the shared fantasy, and I'm going to demonstrate to you that each and every stage and sub-phase and sub-stage has an impact on you. Each and every ingredient, component, and transition within the shared fantasy has a massive mental health impact on you, and physical, by the way. The body reacts as well. So this is the shared fantasy. And then the second half of the day tomorrow, we are going to begin to discuss coping strategies and so on. So the second half tomorrow, we're going to discuss what happens if you are trapped, if you cannot leave the shared fantasy, if you cannot disentangle yourself, you cannot break up, you cannot terminate the relationship. What happens then? What can you do to protect yourself and so on? The next 2 days will be dedicated to healing, recovery and healing. One piece of warning, or a disclaimer, or a caveat. I'm saying all these words to demonstrate to you my command of the English language. So, that was a joke, by the way. So, the seminar is founded on psychology. I don't want to say science, because psychology, as some of you may know, in my view at least, is a pseudoscience. I have a PhD in physics, and physics does not resemble in any way, shape, or form psychology, I'm sorry to say. However, psychology is a great descriptive discipline. It captures things. It's akin to excellent literature. Dostoevsky was a great psychologist, for example. So, this seminar is based, and emanates from studies, and only studies. No online nonsense, self-styled experts, empaths, and other such hype and balderdash, frankly. So we're going to discuss only what we do know. And what we do know sometimes is going to contradict, I hope it does, contradict your prejudices and biases and convictions and stereotypes. You're going to find that many of the things that I say provoke in you resistance. You say, it's not true. My experience is different. You know, I've read online that it's not true. I've been to forums and YouTube channels, and none of this is true. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about, which essentially is true, of course. But this is the science. These are the facts. Of course, we have a tendency, when we are victimized, we have a tendency to demonize the victimizer or the abuser. We have a tendency to absolve ourselves from any contribution to our predicament. Of course, we are never guilty, we're never responsible, or not to that extent. We have a tendency to objectify the abuser, make the abuser a force of nature, something supernatural in many ways. And when you go online, you will find many channels that proclaim and promulgate that the narcissist is a demon or the outcome of demon possession. I'll be the last to argue with that, but still, you will see that I'm going to challenge and undermine many of the things you came here believing to be founded, and because they're not. There's a lot of nonsense going on. Misuse and abuse of terminology, for example, gaslighting. There is wrong information, utterly wrong information, and so on. And at the end of this seminar, you will be on firm ground as far as studies are concerned, and I'm talking studies dated 2024 and so on. This, the recent cutting edge, bleeding edge research. Okay. One last thing, and you notice that I'm saying one last thing every few minutes. So one last thing, online there's a link to a booklet. It's a booklet that I've written specially for you. It's 40 pages, and the booklet summarizes the state of the art when it comes to recovery and healing from narcissistic abuse. Historically, some of you may know, some of you may not know, and are about to find out. So historically, I'm the guy who coined the phrase narcissistic abuse in the late 80s, and I was the first to write a book about narcissistic abuse. The book was published in 1997. Lydia is responsible for that. I threw the manuscript into the trash bin, and Lydia salvaged it together with my PhD diploma, by the way. At that period, I was a bit self-destructive. And there was Lydia there, and she, there's a story. There was a rabbi. His name was Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, for the Israelis here. Rabbi Akiva lived in the second part of the 1st century. He was born about 15 years after Jesus, after the crucifixion. And he lived in what is today the state of Israel, and so on and so forth. And Rabbi Akiva went away to study. And he became very famous. He didn't have a YouTube channel, but he still became very famous. And he returned to his home city. He returned with 24,000 students. Like Jesus had 12, wasn't much of an influencer, mind you. But Rabbi Akiva had 24,000. So Rabbi Akiva came with the 24,000 to the gateway, to the entrance to his home city. And a woman charged forth. She was badly dressed. By the way, it's described in the text that she was badly dressed. She was badly dressed, unkempt, and she was his age. He was not young anymore. He was like, 70. He died at the amazing age of 85. And so she came forth, and she fell on the ground, and she kissed his feet, which I pretty much like, and then his students shooed her away. They said to her, "What are you doing, woman? Get away from him. You're not worthy of touching him," and so on. And he stopped them. This was his wife, Rachel. And he stopped his students, and he said to them, what you have, what I have, and what I know, and what you know is hers. Sheli v'shelachem shelahi. What is mine and what is yours is hers. She deserves the credit, not me, not you. Same with my wife, Lydia. What is mine and what is yours will become yours is hers. Time to start the seminar. I know you don't believe me yet, but let's see. Yesterday I wrote something and published it on Instagram. That's the adolescent in me. I still have an Instagram account. I published something and I posted it on Instagram, and I said that self-sufficiency, is a delusion. Because we are all dependent on life forms. For example, what would you be without your gut bacteria? you wouldn't be much. We're all dependent on other life forms. But the narcissist pretends to be self-sufficient. That is the core issue in narcissism, the pretension to self-sufficiency. It's a pretension, of course, because narcissism is a form of extreme dependency. It's actually a kind of addictive disorder. The narcissist is addicted to input and feedback from other people, known as narcissistic supply. It's an addict who is highly dependent and pretends to need no one, to love no one, to care for no one. Pretends that he could live alone and is perfectly godlike, encompasses the whole universe. And yet there is enormous dependency there. It is a denial of this dependency that is narcissism. We call this process compensation. Narcissism, therefore, is a compensatory process. The narcissist compensates for something, and it is up to us, as the detectives that we are, to find out what is a narcissist compensating for? Or, to put it more colloquially, what is a narcissist hiding? What is he hiding? There is a feeling with the narcissist of imminent and immanent duplicity, as if what you see is not always what you get. There is the narcissist and the narcissist once removed, and there is daylight between them. It is this that gives rise to the uncanny valley reaction, which I will discuss a bit later. And so the narcissist pretends that he is not, I'm saying he, by the way, 50% of all narcissists are women. That's not some Vaknin. That is a Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, edition 5, text revision, 2022. Finally, the DSM accepted that half of all narcissists are women, while previous editions, 1980, the DSM-3, 2000, the DSM-4, the text revisions in between, previous editions insisted that 75% of narcissists are men. So we don't know exactly why this happened, why now half of all narcissists are women. We think, we speculate in the academic community, that it's because women became much more masculine. These are studies by Lisa Wade and many others that demonstrate conclusively that the self-perception and self-concept of women has changed dramatically, and now women perceive themselves the way men used to perceive themselves in the 1980s. So women describe themselves in way more stereotypically masculine terms. And because narcissism has been always associated with masculinity, it was a masculinity disorder. Then, of course, as women become more masculine, they become more narcissistic, and don't tell anyone, more psychopathic as well. Well, now, half of all narcissists are women. I'm going to use he, I'm going to use the male gender pronouns, because this is good literature. This is Victorian. In good English literature, we use the male gender pronoun because we are chauvinists. Okay, we are getting there. So, there is a pretension to independence, pretension to personal autonomy, pretension to superiority. These are all forms of self-enhancement. That's a clinical term, by the way. Self-enhancement. Colloquially, vernacularly, we say self-aggrandizement. But the correct term is self-enhancement, and I will explain why a bit later. People around the narcissist, especially intimate partners, suffer betrayal. They're betrayed. I'll explain in a minute how and why they're betrayed. But one thing is important to understand. The narcissist interacts with other people regardless of their role or capacity, identically. So the narcissist would interact with his or her intimate partner exactly the same way. The narcissist would interact with a friend, so-called friend, exactly the same way the narcissist would interact with his or her colleagues, exactly the same way the narcissist would interact with a pastor in church or with a neighbor. So there is a scheme called the shared fantasy, which the narcissist uses in all his interpersonal interactions. What I've just told you is mind-boggling, because healthy people construct each relationship from the ground level up. When you interact with your intimate partner, your interaction is never the same as with your colleagues, which is never the same as with your neighbors, which is never the same as with the IRS agent that visits you after the seminar. So each relationship of a healthy, normal person is specially constructed, idiosyncratically constructed. We don't take the same scheme and we apply it everywhere. The narcissist does apply it everywhere, and the reason is the narcissist is unable to perceive you at all. It would be very difficult for you to wrap your mind around this. We're going to come to it a bit later. I'm giving you just highlights. But the narcissist is unable to perceive your separateness and your externality. As far as a narcissist is concerned, you are not external, and you are definitely not separate from him. And because you are not external and you're not separate, because you are merely elements and figments in the narcissist's big playground, his mind, then he treats all of you identically, because you're all internal objects. So I'm beginning to point out to you, I hope, that the differences differences between narcissists and healthy, normal people are not minor. We are not talking about someone who is, like me, for example, obnoxious. We are not talking about someone who is haughty, also like me. We are not talking merely about someone who is a bit dysympathetic, doesn't care about people. So when you go around labeling everyone a narcissist, I mean, your ex-wife is definitely a narcissist, but your ex-husband is a narcissist, the neighbor you've just had an argument with is definitely, beyond any clinical doubt, a narcissist. And of course, politicians and show business and entertainment, and ultimately you discover that half the population, according to the UN census, are narcissists. You can see that this has nothing to do with pathological narcissism. Pathological narcissism is a serious, severe mental illness. Severe. So severe that the father of the field, Otto Kernberg, who is still alive, by the way, the father of the field, suggested at some point in 1975 that narcissistic personality disorder, as well as borderline personality disorders, are forms of psychosis, pseudo-psychosis. They are on the verge, on the border of psychosis. Hence, borderline. They're almost psychotic. These people are almost psychotic. Narcissists are almost psychotic. And in many, many ways, narcissists are psychotic. So, of course, statistically, it's highly improbable that all the people you label as narcissists nonchalantly are actually narcissists. Because as you will see when we delve deeper into the rabbit hole, narcissism is a phantasmagoria. It's a surrealistic landscape of utter devastation of all mental processes, mental constructs, and so on and so forth. It's a dreamscape, more like a nightmarescape, of unprecedented proportions, which in many ways exceeds even the desolation and devastation of the borderline. It was Kernberg who said that narcissism, pathological narcissism, is a defense against borderline personality organization. So, because it's a defense, it's an added layer of mental illness. We have borderline personality disorder, and we have an added layer of mental illness, which is the defense against the borderline organization. At the core of the experience, with the narcissist, exposure to narcissism, yes? At the core is a sense of betrayal. Why do you feel betrayed? Repeatedly and constantly, by the way. Why do you feel betrayed? There are several layers to the betrayal. There's the obvious betrayal. The obvious betrayal is he cheats on you, or she cheats on you. The obvious betrayal is rejection, devaluation, discard. These are obvious betrayals. They're trivial betrayals. But there is a much deeper layer of betrayal. Because the narcissist does not perceive you as external objects, because the narcissist converts you into an internal object, a figment, non-real, the narcissist continues to interact with a version of you which is never you. So the narcissist would interact with an idealized version of you, but not with you. The narcissist would interact with a devalued version of you, but not with you. Ultimately, you perceive this as rejection. If a narcissist refuses to interact with you as you are, if the narcissist insists on changing you in his mind into an idealized version, into a devalued version, anything but you, anything is better than you, like, that's rejection. That's betrayal. And you feel it. Even if you deny it, and most of you deny it, most people exposed to pathological narcissism deny. In a minute, we'll come to that. Even when you do deny it, in your unconscious, deep inside, when the narcissist tells you, wow, you're drop-dead gorgeous, you're amazing, you're hyper-intelligent, you're unprecedented, I've never had such an experience like that in my life, you're the one and only, that's the first date. The second date is let's get married, the third date, how many children we will have together. So this alacrity, this intensity, they are unreal. You perceive the lack of reality in this. You somehow understand that it's performative. It's a kind of performance, not for your benefit, for the narcissist's benefit. And there's a sense, a settling, unsettling sense of betrayal. Because who wants to be loved for who they are not? You want to be loved for who you are. You don't want to be loved for who you are not. And never mind how many times I will tell, the narcissist will tell you, you are hyper-intelligent, if you know yourself to be of average intelligence. The gap between his overt, ostentatious assessment of you, the love bombing, the gap between the love bombing and who you know yourself to be, this is the gap that grates and creates the feeling that you are being ignored, rejected, betrayed. Love bombing, therefore, creates an amazing reaction of a counterintuitive reaction of betrayal, actually. So you're betrayed, and this is the most fundamental level. At some point, the narcissist forces you to regulate him. That is common in borderline personality disorder as well. These disorders, this family of disorders, the family from hell, the erratic, dramatic family of personality disorders, also known as cluster B personality disorders. What is common to all of them is a problem with self-regulation. Self-regulation in healthy people, in normal people, is the ability to somehow stabilize emotions before they become overwhelming, somehow stabilize moods before they consume you and paralyze you, and somehow stabilize cognitions before you become psychotic and over the top. This ability to stabilize the internal environment, these internal shock absorbers, they are known as self-regulation. The people who suffer from cluster B, or not suffer, most of them don't suffer, from cluster B personality disorders, these people have problems with self-regulation. The only way they can regulate is from the outside, via other people. So the borderline, for example, she would find an intimate partner. I'm saying she, again, it's sexist, I hope. And I'm saying she because until recently we believed that the majority of people diagnosed with borderline personality disorder were women. This was gender bias, of course. Today, half of all people diagnosed with borderline are men. But I'm still using she for historical reasons. So, the borderline would choose an intimate partner, and she would outsource her regulatory functions. She would outsource them to the intimate partner. She would expect the intimate partner to keep her happy. In other words, to stabilize her mood, her labile moods. She would expect the intimate partner to control her emotions. She would expect the intimate partner to tell her what's real and what's not, to substitute the ego function of reality testing. So this is called external regulation. When inside there is nothing but absence and emptiness. These disorders, they are absences masquerading as presences. They are empty, that's emptiness pretending to be something, nothing pretending to be something. By the way, that's not some Vaknin. That happens to be the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. One of the diagnostic criteria of borderline personality disorder is internal emptiness. And most of the work done since the 1970s until today deals with this empty schizoid core, with this hollow void, with howling winds, where a person should have been. Thurston, not like thirsty, but Thurston, Thurstin, she came up with a metaphor of a black hole. She said there's a black hole. She was referring to autistic children, by the way, which today is politically incorrect. So today we apply this metaphor to narcissists and to a large extent to borderlines, less than narcissists, but mostly to narcissists and psychopaths. They have this black hole. Nothing can escape. Nothing can escape this black hole, and yet it is also a black box. We have no idea what's happening inside. Is there a way to decipher and decode the narcissist? Is this an enigma? If we are sufficiently versed in cryptography, can we read the mind of the narcissist? The answer is no. There is nothing to read. There is no one at home. There's no home. When you have interacted with a narcissist, if you were unfortunate enough to interact with a narcissist, you are actually interacting with the outer darkness, with oblivion, with deep space. If you're religious, you can use these metaphors. You have been interacting with a non-entity, a non-being. And this, of course, is a highly terrifying and deconstructing experience. We can cope pretty well with vicious people, evil people, wicked people, the most extreme criminal. Why can we cope with these people? Because we have something in common with these people. There is a commonality. There is a shared ground. We can understand them somehow. Someone who murdered. We are not murderers yet. We'll see by the end of the seminar what will happen, but we are not murderers yet. But we can understand the kind of rage or even calculation that could lead to murder. It's not outside the remit of what it is to be human, of the human experience. But when we come across the narcissist, there is no common ground. There is no commonality. There is an imitation, a mimicry, an expert simulation of a human being standing before you, or interacting with you, or dating you, or having sex with you, or loving you, claiming to love you. And this expert simulation gives rise to what we know, or what we call the uncanny valley reaction. The uncanny valley reaction was first described by a Japanese. His name was Masahiro Mori in 1970. That's 70. Yes, I was already alive. You can guess my age. So Masahiro Mori in 1970 came up with the idea of the discovery of the uncanny valley. Masahiro Mori very presciently and very prophetically said, when robots will become humanoid, when you will not be able to tell the difference between a robot and a human being anymore. In other words, when a robot will pass what is known as the Turing test, when robots will be indistinguishable from human beings, people will have a reaction of extreme discomfort. We call it dissonance. People will have a dissonant reaction. The closer the robot resembles a human being, the higher the dissonance. When you come across a narcissist, you come across a simulation of a full-fledged human being. Something is awry, something is missing, something is off-key, something is not well put together. This is half-baked. It's like a work in progress with no progress. So you react with internal discomfort, and this is the uncanny valley reactions. Now, if you go online, everyone and his dog will tell you this is not true. The narcissist is a great actor, thespian skills, and the narcissist succeeded to deceive you. Sometimes for years. Because the narcissist is this great actor and succeeded to pull the wool over your eyes and mislead you. And you had no idea it's a narcissist until much, much later, when the mask fell. Studies do not support this. Actually, no study supports this, of dozens. That is absolutely untrue. It's a post facto justification. You feel uncomfortable. Studies show that you are aware of the narcissism. There is a scholar by the name of Lombardi, and she came up with she's from Harvard University. She conducted like decades of studies. And she said that it takes 3 seconds. Most studies settle on 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds, you know that something is wrong with this person. Absolutely no. Why you're denying it? This is one of the issues we'll discuss in the seminar. But you are denying it. Possibly later, you feel stupid. No one wants to feel stupid. So, you've been manipulated. Right? So, it's one possibility. There are others, I think, more relevant reasons. We'll come to it a bit later. The minute you meet the narcissist, there is an inexorable series of steps in a machinery that is set in motion. This machinery is impersonal. It is activated and triggered with every encounter, with every kind of person in any role, and this is the machinery of the shared fantasy. The shared fantasy lures you in, baits you, and then spits you out, and you are transformed by it. We will discuss the shared fantasy tomorrow in great detail, and I will introduce to you some pretty shocking facts about the shared fantasy and what is really going on in the mind of the narcissist and in your mind when you're exposed to the shared fantasy. It's one of the most amazing psychological processes or dynamics or mechanisms that I know of. And there is little that I don't know in psychology. So it's absolutely, possibly, the most amazing thing I've ever come across. Regrettably, it was not my idea. The shared fantasy was first described by Sander, S-A-N-D-E-R, in 1989, I'm sorry. Okay. Before we proceed, we must make a distinction between narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic style, and dark personalities, such as dark triad and dark tetrad personalities. They are not the same. Everything you've learned online from self-styled experts, discard. Unfortunately, there's not a trash bin big enough for this. Almost everything. Because they would tell you that dark triad personalities are narcissists. They're not. Let me disambiguate. Narcissistic style is someone who is obnoxious, someone who is haughty, arrogant, someone who is disempathic, a little exploitative or a lot exploitative, and so on and so forth. Someone you wouldn't want to get married to, unless he's very rich, of course, and so on. So this kind of person has a narcissistic style. But this person is possessed of empathy, is able to tell the difference between reality and fantasy, and can make the distinction between internal objects and external objects. This is the narcissistic style, and we believe that the incidence and prevalence of narcissistic style is increasing dramatically, has been increasing dramatically over the past 40 years. Studies by Twenge and Campbell, for example, starting in 2009 up to 2018, these studies have shown that among young people, people under the age of 25, believe it or not, adolescence today is until the age of 21 or 25. Okay, so among these late adolescents, the prevalence of narcissistic style has quintupled, 5 times higher. So narcissistic style is becoming the bon ton because it's a positive adaptation. In other words, if you have a narcissistic style, you're a winner. You get places, you accomplish things, you become a celebrity or whatever, especially today with the technology and enabling technology such as social media, YouTube, and so on. So today it pays to have narcissistic style. And so, of course, it's proliferating. But do not confuse narcissistic style with narcissistic personality disorder. Here are the figures. The prevalence of narcissistic personality disorder in the general population is 1.7. So in this kind of classroom, we would have 0.7 narcissists. Have you ever seen 0.7 narcissists? It's a terrifying thing to behold. So, in other words, you have met a lot fewer narcissists than you believe. A lot fewer.
But how do you know that? Because I thought that it's only 1% because they are not diagnosed.
No, that's not true. That's another myth.
So how do you...
First of all, it's not true. Covert narcissists attend therapy in much higher rates than the general population. So there are studies by Pincus, 2009, and others, and these studies, there are about 40 studies by now, show that narcissists actually end up in therapy at a rate higher than the general population, and definitely higher than psychotics, for example, higher than borderline personality disorder even. Why is that? Because every narcissist goes through a covert phase. Another myth is that there are overt narcissists and covert narcissists. That is no longer the way we see narcissism, and hasn't been the way we see narcissism since 2012. Today we believe that all narcissists are sometimes overt and sometimes covert. All narcissists go through overt phases and covert phases, especially if they experience collapse or mortification. When the narcissist goes through a covert phase, he is much more likely to attend therapy than the general population. And because all narcissists go through a covert phase, all of them, then this means that all narcissists, in effect, end up in therapy. There are other reasons. For example, today the awareness of narcissism is much higher. So a spouse would push her husband or his wife to go to therapy, which wouldn't have happened 20 years ago. Today a spouse would say, listen, I think you're a narcissist because I watched some Vaknin's videos, which makes me very hated. And you should go to therapy, you should attend therapy. And it happens. Even courts are more aware, guardians and so on. So the increase in awareness of narcissism pushes narcissists to clinical settings, and today to say that narcissists do not attend therapy and are underdiagnosed is a complete myth. Completely wrong. Not true. Okay. So we have narcissistic style. We have narcissistic personality disorder, 1.7% of the population, which means you have met a lot fewer narcissists than you think. And we have dark personalities. Dark personalities are people who have narcissistic traits but are not narcissists. They have traits, but they are not narcissists. They have psychopathic traits, but they are not psychopaths. And they have Machiavellianism. They are manipulative. In clinical terms, because some of you are clinicians and some of you are laymen and lay women, and I need to find the balance, so sometimes I will throw some clinical terms and sometimes I will. So forgive, each half should forgive the other. In clinical terms, we say that dark personalities are subclinical. They have subclinical narcissism, subclinical psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. They are not narcissists, and they are not psychopaths, which creates an enormous confusion, of course, including in scholarly literature, where they investigate dark personalities in order to learn about narcissism. I just gave an interview to BBC, and I criticized the study, and I said, the study is complete nonsense because the total population were dark personalities. So none of them was a narcissist, and so on. So these distinctions are very important. The problems with victims of narcissistic abuse is that the experience is such an outlier, the experience is so surrealistic, so dreamlike, that they are not believed. We know that the majority of victims of narcissistic abuse are not believed, while the majority of victims of abuse, other abuse, are believed. Actually, excessively believed. So, this creates something known as epistemic injury. Epistemic injury leads to epistemic injustice. What is epistemic injustice or epistemic injury? You know something, and you know that it's true. And you're trying to talk to people and tell them, this is what's happened to me. And it really happened. It's true. I'm not delusional. I'm not dreaming it. And you are not believed. You are mocked, or you're criticized, or you're told that you are too sensitive. And this condition is known as epistemic injury, which leads to epistemic injustice. You need to know that 80% of the global population, the population on Earth, we have 8.3 billion people, so 80% of them do not recognize the diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. We have two major diagnostic manuals. One is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, and it is used in North America, the United States of America, big parts of Canada, some parts of the United Kingdom, Anglo-Saxon countries. The DSM, therefore, is used by 20% of the world population. 80% of the world population use another book, That book is known as International Classification of Diseases, or ICD. The ICD is published by the World Health Organization, WHO. And lo and behold, in the ICD, which is used by 80% of humanity, there is no diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder. The ICD instead includes a list of trait domains, a list of traits. And when a patient comes to a clinician who uses the ICD, the clinician picks traits like Lego bricks. He picks traits and he creates a trait domain profile. The trait domain profile, which is the equivalent of narcissistic personality disorder in the DSM, includes 3 traits: dissociality, or what is known as antisocial behavior in the United States; anankastia, which is a kind of obsession compulsion, the tendency to repeat behaviors, ritualistic behaviors and so on, what Freud called repetition compulsion. Freud called it repetition compulsion. And this leads to negative affectivity. So according to the ICD, if a person is dissocial, antisocial, a bit psychopathic, if the person has negative affects, only negative affects, no positive emotions, narcissists have no access to positive emotions. Narcissists cannot love. End of story. Any one of you who convinced themselves that they loved you, narcissists have no access to positive emotions. So they cannot love, for example. They have access only to negative emotions. For example, anger, hatred, envy. These are negative affects. So narcissists have only negative affectivity. Similar to psychopaths, by the way. Psychopaths are the same. So when you put these 3 trait domains together, what you get under the ICD, equivalent of narcissism. Narcissists are therefore drowning in negative affects. And exactly like the borderline, under certain situations and circumstances, the narcissist can dysregulate. Remember that Kernberg suggested that pathological narcissism is a defense against an underlying borderline personality organization. And the main feature of borderline personality is emotional dysregulation, the inability to control emotions, being overwhelmed by emotions, positive and negative. When the borderline loves, she drowns in her love. When she hates, trust me, you drown in her hate. So this is dysregulation. When the narcissistic defenses are removed, when they are destroyed, what remains behind is a borderline. So for example, when the narcissist is humiliated and shamed in public, abruptly, suddenly, unexpectedly, this creates a condition called narcissistic mortification. At that point, all the narcissistic defenses collapse. They shut off, they switch off. This process is known as decompensation. So there is mortification, being humiliated suddenly in public. Then there is decompensation. Tuck, 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 tuck. It's like all the defenses close down. You can hear it almost. And then what is left behind is a borderline. Actually a borderline. And the narcissist then begins to emotionally dysregulate and becomes suicidal. The suicidal ideation. So narcissism is about negative emotions. When you develop a relationship with a narcissist, you're interacting with negativity. The negativity rubs off you. Even the positive aspects, for example, during the love bombing phase, there's something in it that is poisoned. Something in everything the narcissist does is toxic. It rubs off you. The narcissist expects you to act as an external regulator, and for you to act as the narcissist external regulator, he hands over to you his toxicity. He gives you his poison. Like you will take his poison away. You are the antidote that he has been waiting for all his life, usually. So then you become the repository of all the negative emotions, negative effects, of the dysregulation, of the fears, everything becomes deposited in you. From that minute, the narcissist cannot let you go. You realize that. Because you come to own, to possess a part of the narcissist's mind. He cannot let you go more than he can let his brain go. From that moment, you are captive. You're a hostage. And to make sure that you remain within the shared fantasy and do not walk away as a captive, as a hostage, unbeknownst to you, very often, the narcissist uses a series of devices, series of strategies to addict you, to cause addiction. We'll discuss all this tomorrow. The narcissist needs from you what I call the 4 S's. You remember today we are giving an overview of narcissism. That is not the topic of the seminar. Topic of the seminar is healing and recovery. But I would like to make sure that we are all on the same level playing field. We are all using the same terminology and so on. So regard this as a dictionary building exercise. Okay? Now if you go online, I'm sorry?
Negativity into another person. I can't
I'll discuss this tomorrow. I'll discuss this tomorrow in the shared fantasy. The narcissist actually blackmails you, but I will describe tomorrow how he does it. Now, for you to understand, before I proceed, what I'm describing is not a cunning, scheming, premeditated Moriarty type. It's not a master arch criminal who's saying, here it is, I'm going to take this intimate partner, I'm going to get her addicted, I'm going to poison her mind, That's not the way it goes. This, what I've just described, is a psychopath. Psychopaths do this. A narcissist is the victim of his own inexorable dynamics. Most of the things I describe are unconscious. And we learn about them by talking to narcissists, analyzing them, and or observing behavior. But a narcissist is not evil in the sense that there is no premeditation here. Now, if you go online, everyone and his dog and his mother-in-law will tell you that the victims are chosen. The victims of narcissistic abuse are chosen. I came up with a phrase narcissistic abuse and with the concept of narcissistic abuse because narcissistic abuse is like no other. There is no other form of abuse that comes close to this. Because the narcissist needs to kill you metaphorically. Otherwise, you are useless in the shared fantasy. The narcissist needs to deanimate you, to take away your vitality, to render you an Egyptian mummy. So that's why narcissistic abuse is unique in this sense. But you're not chosen, the victims are not chosen. There's no process of choice and there is no type. That's completely untrue. It is true that given the opportunity, a narcissist would prefer, for example, a trophy wife or a trophy girlfriend, given the opportunity. But that's happenstance, that's coincidence. A narcissist wouldn't go looking for that. There's no orientation. What the narcissist is interested in is what he can take from you. And I call it the 4 S's. S. So, sex, supply, narcissistic, or in rare cases, sadistic supply. The pleasure of your pain. Yeah? Services, narcissist uses you for services. And safety or stability. The narcissist abuses you initially to test you. The idea is to test you, as you will see tomorrow in the shared fantasy. The narcissist converts you into a maternal figure. So one of the reasons the narcissist abuses you is that he's constantly testing you. He's constantly testing whether, essentially, you're a good enough mother. Are you going to stick around, never mind what he does to you? He's pushing the envelope, he's behaving egregiously, because he wants to make sure that you love him unconditionally, that you will never abandon him, never mind what he does to you, that never mind how extreme his behavior or misbehavior or misconduct is, you're going to overlook it, you're going to suffer, and you're going to stick around. So the 4 S's are integrated into the shared fantasy. He expects you to provide him with 2 of the 4 S's. Any 2, by the way. But he expects you to provide the 4 S's as a maternal figure. This we will discuss tomorrow with the shared fantasy. Keith Campbell is one of the most preeminent scholars of narcissism, and Keith Campbell suggested the chocolate cake model of relationships with narcissists. Keith Campbell said, being with a narcissist is like eating a chocolate cake. Initially, it's very tasty and alluring and irresistible. And then you end up feeling guilty, you become obese, and you go to seminars about narcissistic abuse. So this is the chocolate cake model of Keith Campbell. I'll read to you how partners describe their relationships in studies. Studies, remember, this is all studies. How did partners describe the relationship? They describe the relationship as shallow, transitory. By the way, when I say relationships, not only intimate and romantic, because we're talking about studies in the workplace, studies on Facebook, studies generally. So shallow, transitory, non-committed, mind games, power plays, triangulation, focused on the narcissist and his needs, emotionless, no intimacy. The main complaints of the partners, according to studies, were the narcissist is self-centered, materialistic, deceptive, controlling, exploitative, plays games with them, non-committed, and unfaithful. The main emotions reported by partners of narcissists after the relationship is over, or was over: anger, glad that it's over, regret, in this order, by the way. The amazing thing about these studies, actually not the studies, but the amazing thing about these responses is that many of these responses are counterfactual. They do not reflect reality. For example, the unfaithful part. The vast majority of partners, romantic, intimate partners of narcissists, were convinced that the narcissist is cheating on them. Infidelity. They were convinced the narcissist is unfaithful. Massive studies demonstrate this is not true. I'll come to it later. Narcissistic women are more likely to cheat. Narcissistic men are actually less likely to cheat, according to studies. And yet the perception is that narcissistic men cheat all the time, on every opportunity, or create opportunities, monkey branching, if you heard. That is not true. Other impressions of the partner within the shared fantasy were also not true. Why were the partners so wrong? Why this impression? For example, the impression that the narcissist is deceptive. Deception implies intention. You know, in criminal law, mens rea, so intention. We know that narcissists are not deceptive, actually. They are just confused about the difference between reality and fantasy. We know that they don't lie more than average people. But what they do is they confabulate. They create stories, narratives, because they have huge memory gaps. They are dissociative. So why did intimate partners who spend days and nights and years and decades with narcissists, where do they get all this wrong information and why? Because the main thing the narcissist does to his victim or his partner or his friend or his colleague or whatever, the main thing is to impair, to destroy the reality testing of the other person. The main thing the narcissist does is divorces you from reality, takes you away from reality, and creates an alternative reality for you. Again, there's a mistake here, especially online, when people say that narcissists gaslight. They do not gaslight. Actually, psychopaths gaslight. Gaslighting involves premeditation, intention, and gaslighting involves the ability to tell the difference between reality and fantasy. When the psychopath gaslights you, he is trying to destabilize your judgment of reality, knowing full well what is reality. The psychopath knows what's real. He just wants you to lose this capacity to know what's real. The famous movie, Gaslight, 2 of them, by the way. So, but the narcissist, when the narcissist tells you, this is real, he believes it. The narcissist fully believes the fantasy. When the narcissist makes you a promise, he has every intention to keep it. So narcissists do not future fake. That's wrong. Narcissists never keep their promises. That's another story. But when they make the promise, they fully intend to keep it. They fully believe it. They do not think they're deceiving you. There's no intention here to deceive. So these are very crucial aspects. In this sense, narcissists are delusional. Narcissism is a delusional disorder. So we already identified at the beginning of this lecture that narcissism is very close to psychosis. And now we are saying that narcissism is very close to delusionality, delusional disorder. And you are beginning to understand that the narcissist is no longer with us. He has nothing to do with reality. He lives in the clouds of his own fantasy, within which he is godlike, and he introduces you into the shared fantasy, and one of the conditions is you give up on reality, and you give up on your reality testing. End of story. It's a precondition for being included in the shared fantasy. Consequently, the victims misjudge even the narcissist. Their ability to gauge reality appropriately is so screwed up that they can't even evaluate appropriately their own intimate partner, the narcissist. That's the damage to the reality testing in the shared fantasy. I want to talk about my favorite subject. As a cerebral narcissist, my favorite subject is sex. So we need to discuss sexuality, the narcissist sexuality. I will not go on about it, but we need to mention it. Because sexuality, first and foremost, is highly indicative of internal processes. Sometimes we study sexuality in order to understand the mind of the agent or the person. And because sexuality plays a major role in the shared fantasy, at least in the initial phases, in the initial stages. Now, you know by now that there are two types, there are many types, but there are two types. One way to divide narcissists is to cerebral narcissists and somatic narcissists. Cerebral narcissists are narcissists who derive narcissistic supply. They garner attention and adulation and admiration and so on by flaunting and displaying their intellect, intelligence, erudition, knowledge, and so on and so forth, usually in seminars. And there are somatic narcissists. Somatic narcissists are narcissists who use their bodies, leverage their bodies to obtain supply. Doesn't have to be sex. Could be bodybuilding, musculature. Could be some other use of the body, for example, ostentatious clothing or fashion. Anything to do with the body. So going to the gym rats, being a gym rat. So the use of the body. So we have somatic and we have cerebral. But both the somatic and the cerebral narcissists are what we call autoerotic. Now, let me explain this to you. It's a bit disgusting, but okay. so is most psychology. The somatic narcissist is hyper-sexed. In other words, the somatic narcissist resembles very much a sex addict, sex addiction, but not a histrionic. The histrionic, someone with histrionic personality disorder, hates sex and finds it repulsive. People with histrionic personality disorder are ostentatiously hyper-emotional. They use emotions and flirtation. They're flirtatious. They're teasers, if you want to use a slang. They're teasers. But studies have shown that people with histrionic personality disorder do not like sex. They actually find it disgusting. Whereas the somatic narcissist is heavily into sex and resembles very much a sex addict. He uses conquest, sexual conquest and so on, as a form of narcissistic supply. The cerebral narcissist is asexual. Not clinically asexual, because someone who is clinically asexual, there is such a thing, 1% of people don't have a sex drive. They're asexual. Someone who is clinically asexual is someone who doesn't have a sex drive, as I said, and is not interested in sex, period. At all. Someone like that may masturbate, but otherwise is not interested in sex. The cerebral narcissist is temporarily asexual. Like in the condition, in the cerebral phase, he or she is asexual. So there's he doesn't engage in sex, he rejects people who approach him for sex, and so on and so forth. Both of them have two things in common. Before I proceed, every cerebral goes through somatic phases. Every somatic tries to go through cerebral phases. Unfortunately, there's a prerequisite, you need a brain, and some of them don't possess this particular part of the anatomy, but otherwise, they try. In other words, in narcissism, there is no type constancy. Every overt has covert phases. Every covert has overt phases. Somatic, cerebral. It's one disorder. It's wrong to divide it, to slice it. It's completely wrong. Counterfactual. Any clinician would tell you this. So every somatic has cerebral phases and so on. Somatics and cerebrals have two things in common: autoerotism and betrayal fantasy. I will explain briefly. Autoerotism is when you are attracted to yourself as a sexual object. You find your own body sexually arousing. And so what you do, you use the partner's body to masturbate with. It is through the partner's gaze that you see your own body and become aroused. So you need the partner's gaze, because it's like a mirror. There's an effect called mirroring. It's like a mirror. You see yourself, oh my God, I'm gorgeous. And at the same time, you need the partner's body as a form of masturbatory aid. That is autoerotism, and autoerotism is common to all narcissists, no exception. Covert, overt, somatic, cerebral, you name it. They're all autoerotic. None of them has what we call object orientation. None of them has a sex drive that is directed at other people. To put it in more shocking terms, not a single narcissist finds another person sexually arousing. Not a single narcissist finds another person sexually arousing. Never mind how many times you have had sex with a narcissist, it was about him. It was a form of masturbation. The main attraction is to their own bodies. The second feature that is common to cerebral and somatic narcissists and all other narcissists is the betrayal fantasy. The narcissist uses sexuality, uses sex, to essentially degrade the partner, diminish her, humiliate her, or somehow render her inferior. One way of doing this is forcing the partner to have sex with other people. This is the most common fantasy. Most common fantasy in narcissism. And this is why narcissists push their partners to have threesomes and kink, and it's about degradation. The second most common fantasy is about rape, by the way. Rape fantasy is very common in narcissism. This is fantasy, it's not action. But these fantasies are very common. Narcissists, therefore, I'm coming back full circle to infidelity and cheating. They don't need to do this. Because they are sexually attracted to their own bodies and only to their own bodies. We discovered in studies that the rate of actual sexual encounters with other people is low, especially among men, strangely, and definitely among cerebral narcissists. So there is no incentive to cheat. So infidelity is actually low. I wanted to explain to you why. We have conducted, over the decades, we have conducted clinical studies of people who've been exposed to narcissism on a prolonged period, minimum 6 months, but more typically 3 years, 10 years, and so on and so forth. And here is what we discovered. This is a summary of the studies. Victims of narcissistic abuse were more depressed, more anxious, more disoriented, more aggressive. It's called defiant reactance, the clinicians among you, more defiantly reactant. So more aggressive, more dissociative, trapped, hopeless, and helpless. They were traumatized, and quite a few of them had psychotic micro-episodes, reacted with a form of psychosis that is very short, shorter than 4 days. So as you can see, the damage is not small. We are not talking about typical abuse. Typical abuse, you feel bad. After that, you feel even worse. After that, you feel glad that you have left a relationship, and so on and so forth. We are not talking about this. We are talking about mental illness induced in the victim. So it's a very, very dangerous and grave situation, and it is encapsulated, we're trying to encapsulate it with concepts such as trauma bonding, or Stockholm syndrome, or shared psychosis, or cult mind, or mass psychogenic illness. These are desperate attempts that we are making as a profession to try to capture and understand what is happening to the victims of narcissistic abuse, because something really bad is happening to them. And it is deep, and it changes them. For example, we discovered in most victims of narcissistic abuse a clinical feature called estrangement. Estrangement is a clinical term. It means they felt like they were not themselves. They felt a stranger to themselves. They felt estranged. They felt they were no longer themselves. It's as if their core identity was ripped out of them. They no longer had an identity. And something alien was installed in there. Now, this sounds very, very Steven Spielberg, but it's actually real. There is a process called introjection and another process called entrainment. We're going to discuss both of them tomorrow. Narcissists make use of both processes. And the end results of these processes is a takeover, for lack of a better word, a hostile takeover of your mind and even the brain itself, your hardware, not only the software. Your identity is taken away, replaced with something that is not you. And it is done in a manner that is methodical and creates impacts that are very difficult to reverse, which is the topic of the seminar, of course. So it's a bit of a horror movie, you must admit. It's like the Body Snatchers. That's why I felt that narcissistic abuse cannot be compared to any other kind of abuse. You know, a typical abuser, he wants something from you, or she wants something from you. So they want money, or they want sex, or they want, they want something. Or they want to control you, control freaks, or they want to humiliate you, or they want to beat you up because it's fun. Okay, but at least it's limited. It's a single dimension. It's also to some extent predictable, like he's going to beat me up. I know he's going to beat me up. But in between, we're going to be okay. It's like, it's a limited phenomenon. That's not the case with narcissistic abuse. That is not the case with narcissistic abuse. Narcissists negate you. They erase you. They deanimate you. They convert you into a mirage, not even an object, by the way, a mirage, some craziness inside their mind. They want you to conform. They want you to match this internal picture. And they will contort you, and they will distort you, and they will manipulate you, and they will push you and press you like so much putty until you conform to that image. And if you don't, they will punish you. Even when you don't, even when you diverge, even when you deviate, even when you fight back and disagree and criticize, they will punish you. And there are there's a multitude of punishments in store for you. Intermittent reinforcement of this kind leads to the occupation of the mind. You're being invaded. I'm using these words and these metaphors. They're not clinical, but they capture well the process that's happening, as you will see tomorrow, when there's be a deep dive into the shared fantasy. Believe me, a land you have never even imagined could exist. The shared fantasy is the most terra incognita of the human mind that is conceivable. It's shocking. It is a horror movie. So, and it's all unconscious to unconscious. It's all subliminal. It's all communicated in ways that you cannot prove. There's no evidence. You cannot verbalize. You cannot point to something. You cannot convince anyone. You cannot communicate. You cannot... In a way, the rejection of society, when society rejects you as a victim, that's the second prison term. The first prison was a shared fantasy. And your second prison, a bit bigger, is society. And even clinicians, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, many of whom are completely unversed and uneducated when it comes to pathological narcissism and narcissistic abuse. Many, I would say the majority. It's difficult to believe, especially when a clinician comes to face with a narcissist, and the narcissist is superficially charming and glib and convincing and accomplished. Many of them are accomplished. That's another thing that throws people off when I say a narcissist is a child. It's not me. It's the big body of scholarship on narcissism. It's not some Vaknin. I did not invent this. When I say a narcissist is 2 years old, maybe 3 years old, a really, really evolved narcissist is 9 years old. But 2 and 3 are more common. Yeah, but they say, but how can he be 2 to 3 years old? He's a professor of psychology. Well, there's a difference between emotional maturity and what we call semantic memory or semantic capacity and procedural capacity. So there's a difference, in short, between your skills and your emotional maturity. You could be a professor of psychology or the President of the United States and still be 2 years old. Yes, it is possible, because in modern society, especially in postmodern society, we have created a division of labor between cognition and emotion. They don't go together anymore. You could be cognitively evolved and emotionally retarded, forgive the word. And you could be, by the way, emotionally evolved, but cognitively retarded. Some people, for example, with Down syndrome, or intellectually challenged people, or even low-functioning autistic people, have evolved emotionality, but impaired cognitive processes, impaired cognition. There need not be a connection between the two. These are not preconditions. So it's important to understand that when you interact with a narcissist, it's a child. And the narcissist uses all the baits and all the lures and all the wiles and all the manipulative techniques and all that a child uses. And there is one thing we cannot resist, not even narcissists. And one thing we can never ever resist, a crying, traumatized, helpless baby. No women can't resist this, and men can't resist this. When I keep saying that the narcissist converts you into a maternal figure, I don't mean that. I'm not talking about genitalia. I mean, men react to babies the same way women react to babies. There's a maternal instinct in men also. A man would see a baby and it's normal. It's normal reaction. These maternal instincts are appealed to by the narcissist, accessed by the narcissist, activated, manipulated, and so on and so forth. The narcissist wants you to be his mother, but he wants you to be a specific type of mother, and of course a giant of human psychology by the name of Alfred Hitchcock has captured, and I'm kidding you not, by the way, one of the greatest psychologists ever, has captured this in the movie Psycho. Now, the movie Psycho preceded my birth by 1 year, and I don't think it's an accident. So, the movie Psycho was shot in 1960, released in 1960. And in the movie Psycho, there's this guy, Norman Bates, who, by the way, appears to be normal, and so on. And Norman Bates runs a motel, small motel. And what happens is, Norman Bates killed his mother. Killed her like physically, yes, not metaphorically. Killed her, assassinated her. And then what he did, he embalmed her. He embalmed her. He converted her into a mummy, Egyptian mummy. So now she's embalmed. And every morning he goes up, Norman goes up, takes his mother out, his embalmed dead mother, to be clear, out of bed, washes her, seats her on a chair facing the outside world, on a window. There's a window. It's overlooking the yard and I don't know what. In the evening, he comes back, takes her out of the chair, washes her, puts her to sleep, talks to her a bit, kisses her, and goes down. This is the ideal intimate partner of the narcissist, more or less. It's a mother figure who is a bit on the dead side and a lot on the embalmed side. Yeah? That's more or less the picture. And of course, the narcissist has to test you all the time. Remember, narcissistic abuse is 90% testing. People think that narcissistic abuse is evil and wicked. The idea is to crush you and mash you, and you're crushed. Honey, you're crushed. If you're already in the shared fantasy, you have been crushed a long time ago. Just no one told you. The idea is not to crush you. The idea is to test you. How eligible you are. What type of mother you are. How well do you play within the shared fantasy, and so on and so forth. I want to discuss CPTSD and PTSD. I will never ever let you go. You're part of my shared fantasy now. I see the hope in your eyes. Extinguish it. Abandon all hope, you who enter.
Could you please repeat the list that you read about the induced in the victims? What is induced?
You have it in the booklet that is available online. I don't want
Thank
to.
you.
Everything I'm saying is in the booklet that's available online. I have no idea why you came. You could have downloaded the booklet, but I'm kidding. Okay. I want to discuss PTSD and CPTSD. CPTSD is a proposed diagnosis. It was first described by Judith Herman, who was a professor at Harvard at the time in 1992. And Judith Herman said that we should distinguish between acute, what we call acute stress disorder, ASD, or acute PTSD, and the kind of post-traumatic reaction, or the kind of trauma that takes a very long time and is complex and is reactive to repetitive behaviors of the abuser. And she called it CPTSD, or complex trauma. Now, if you go online, victims, real and self-styled, claim that they have PTSD. You cannot have PTSD in a relationship with a narcissist unless the narcissist tries to kill you or perhaps rape you violently, extremely violently. PTSD is a reaction to life-threatening situations experienced personally or witnessed. You could have PTSD by witnessing a life-threatening situation. So it includes natural disasters, war, rape, and all attempts to kill you. These would provoke PTSD. Exposure to a narcissist over 10 years or 20 years or 30 years or 10 months would never yield PTSD. That's complete misdiagnosis. I'm sorry? Even if it's a child? Yes. PTSD is unique to life-threatening conditions. Some relationships with narcissists, a small minority, may lead to complex trauma. Trauma is a rare condition. Everyone walks around saying, I'm traumatized, I'm traumatized. You know, this guy said no to me, I'm traumatized. She said yes to me, I'm traumatized. Everyone is traumatized. We need to begin to use words more carefully. We are debasing terminology. We are abusing, misusing words. Narcissism is a loaded word. It has a clinical meaning. It's a clinical entity. It's called? Yeah. I don't think it's air conditioning. I think it's me. Yeah, you can open the window. You can open the window if you want, but there will be a lot of noise from outside. Okay, I changed the temperature. It will take 10 minutes, something like that, and it will be okay. Trauma is a loaded word. We should be very careful with the words we are using, you know, because if you devalue and depreciate words, that's one reason no one would listen to you next time. It's like crying wolf all the time, you know. So, small percentage of people who experience relationships with narcissists end up being traumatized, and their trauma is exclusively complex. Never, ever PTSD. Anyone who claims otherwise, unless, of course, there were life-threatening events in the relationship. But then it has nothing to do with narcissism. It's any life-threatening event in a relationship would yield the same outcome. I want to finish by noting two things. I said earlier, when we were all much younger, that there's betrayal. And there is a scholar by the name of Jennifer Freyd, F-R-E-Y-D. And Jennifer Freyd came up with the concept of betrayal trauma. Betrayal trauma and trauma blindness. Essentially, it's the same like epistemic injustice. Freyd said that in betrayal trauma, and she has a whole theory about this, it's called BTT, betrayal trauma theory. She said that when you cannot, actually, let me quote what she said. When you are not allowed to express your experience of trauma and abuse, when there's a breach of trust, negative emotions, and profound betrayal by someone you depend on in any crucial way, such denial and repression lead to dissociation and a host of long-term mental health disorders, which I call betrayal trauma. And the inability to talk about your trauma because people are not receptive to your experiences or because you're ashamed. Shame plays a major role in victims. They're ashamed to talk about their experiences. In this situation, you have betrayal blindness, which leads to betrayal trauma. Betrayal is a key feature of such relationships because you make assumptions. You make assumptions when you, for example, engage in a romantic or intimate relationship with someone. There's a basic assumption that they're not going to harm you, that they want your well-being at the very minimum. They want you to feel good, or, and then they harm you. And it's a shocking reversal. It shatters your worldview. It's about worldview. It's not about a specific event. And of course, this happens to narcissists. The narcissist as a child trusts the parent, loves the parent. The narcissist as a child assumes intuitively or unconsciously, as a child, that the parent loves them. The child assumes the parent can be trusted. The child assumes the parent is there, what we call a secure base. The child assumes the parent is safe. And then the very same parent abuses the child in many ways. We'll talk about abuse in a minute, but in many ways. And then there is a betrayal trauma. The narcissist, I told you at the beginning, hands over everything to you. The narcissist was betrayed. He hands over the betrayal to you by betraying you. The narcissist is dissociative. He has memory gaps. He induces in you memory gaps. The narcissist has never separated from his mother, as we will see tomorrow. He never separates from you, and he never allows you to separate from him. How does he do that? He converts you into an internal object, so you can never abandon him. So, everything that has happened to the narcissist as a child, he makes you experience, vicarious experience. He wants you to experience being him. The narcissist wants you to have the experience of being him or her. So, the shared fantasy is about vicariously experiencing by proxy another person who is not there, is emptiness, is a void, is an absence. The narcissist forces you to experience his absence, his emptiness, his black hole. You're consumed, never to be seen again. Sorry? How does it help you? I'll come to that tomorrow. That's a shared fantasy. I'll explain tomorrow. It's a good question. I'll explain tomorrow. I want to read to you 10 ways the narcissist changes your perception of reality and of yourself. And then I want to warn you against 6 mistakes. And then I will release you to go, probably take the first flight out of Macedonia, as I see. And then those of you who are masochistic enough, or already in my shared fantasy and don't know it, will probably come back tomorrow for more. Here are the 10 ways the narcissist destroys the way you saw the world before you met him. It is a destruction not only of your interiority, not only of your internal state. It's not only snatching away your identity and replacing it with something else. It's not only taking over your brain, not as a metaphor, physically, as you will see tomorrow. It's not only that. He makes you distrust everything you thought you knew, everything you believed, the tenets of your inner morality. It's a moral injury. So, I'm going to read to you the 10 ways the narcissist does this. Narcissistic abuse challenges your assumptions about the world. Hidden assumptions, implicit assumptions, or explicit assumptions. In philosophy, we call it the hidden text and the overt text. We usually deconstruct the hidden text to make sense of the world. Okay, so he challenges these assumptions. He challenges these assumptions, and by challenging these assumptions, he destroys two very important instruments that every human being has. Every human being alive has. I don't know about the dead. It's another study. So, the first one is known as theory of mind. A theory of mind requires a process called mentalization or mentalizing. Theory of mind is when we create a theory about other people. What makes them tick? How do they experience their emotions? What are the internal dynamics of these people? The tool we use to create a theory of mind later becomes empathy. So we start as children, as babies, we start by mentalizing. At that stage, we have only what is known as reflexive empathy. Mommy smiles at baby, baby smiles at mommy. And then probably, okay, I'm not going to it. My sense of humor runs away with me sometimes. So, mommy smiles at baby, baby smiles at mommy, that's reflexive empathy. The baby begins to mentalize mommy. What is this thing? What is she thinking? He tries to make sense of her. And he creates a theory about mommy, and then he creates theories about other people, and then he creates a general theory of what it is to be human, and it's called the theory of mind. Okay? The second mechanism that all of us have, it's called internal working model, IWM. It was first proposed by Bowlby. The internal working model is a theory, again it's a theory, about how relationships work. So we have an internal working model about intimate relationships, internal working model about workplace relationships, generally how relationships work. What the narcissist does, he destroys these theories. He destroys your theories of mind, and he destroys your internal working models, and he leaves you bereft. He leaves you with no tools to make sense of the world. We can say that the narcissist creates in you an epistemic crisis. It's as if you are regressed to a stage that you are too young to understand other people and too young, too infantile to make sense of the world. The reason the narcissist destroys these models is because he wants you to be a baby. He wants to regress you. He wants to infantilize you. He wants you, and I will explain tomorrow why, for what purpose. But the epistemic crisis, the damaging of your epistemic tools, your ability to understand the world and other people, has to do with this, with the need to regress you and to infantilize you. Be that as it may, there are 10 damages. The narcissist causes you to believe 10 things that are not true. Number 1, people are irrational. They are self-interested. Most people are exploitative and even evil. He causes you to believe this thing. In effect, the narcissist creates a cult. A cult. We against the world. Everyone outside the cult is evil, wicked, hostile, exploitative, untrustworthy. It's you and me, baby, against the world. So it's a cult mentality, or what we call a cult mind. But to accomplish this, the narcissist needs to convince you that other people are dangerous to you, hostile, and so on. Number 2, justice, order, structure are rare in the universe. Chaos, uncertainty, indeterminacy reign. They are in control. Reality and people in it are untrustworthy because of this unpredictability. Number 3, the world is hostile. At best, it is indifferent to you. There's no meaning. It's a meaningless world. The narcissist creates something, an epistemic crisis, and at a later stage, he creates a doxastic crisis. This is for the clinicians. Yeah? A doxastic crisis means a crisis of beliefs. You no longer trust your own beliefs. And axiological crisis, a crisis of values. So you don't trust what you see, the input, the information. You don't trust your beliefs and you don't trust your values. You're completely disoriented. Exactly like a baby, a newborn, which is exactly where the narcissist wants you to be. Number 4, no good deed goes unpunished. Even if you try hard, even if you're sincere, things rarely work out. You need contacts and you need luck. Everything is pretty random. The narcissist takes away from you meaning, your ability to inject meaning into the world. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist, and he was sent to Auschwitz because he was a Jew. He was sent to Auschwitz. And most people in Auschwitz survived an average of 6 months if they were not Sonderbehandlung, if they were not treated specially before. So this guy survived 3.5 years. Do you know what it means to survive in Auschwitz 3.5 years? It's a miracle. It defies belief. When Viktor Frankl was asked repeatedly, how did you survive? What kept you alive? He said, I invented a meaning for my life. And the meaning was to testify about the Holocaust. And later on, the meaning was to heal people. And he became a therapist, and he invented logotherapy. Logotherapy is a treatment modality. And the idea is that people don't need food, they don't need water, they don't need air, they don't need sex. I mean, they need all these things, but they are not like, you can survive long period of time without these things. But what you cannot survive, even for an extremely short period of time, is meaning. What you cannot survive is meaninglessness. If there's no meaning in your life, you die. If there's no water, you survive 5 days. If there's no food, you survive 4 months. If there's no sex, you survive 64 years. But if there's no meaning in your life, you're unlikely to survive long. So what the narcissist does, definitely, he takes away the meaning in your life. Not only the meaning of your life, but the ability to generate meaning. Takes that away from you. Suddenly everything looks meaningless, purposeless. And that's of course why people end up adopting meanings, for example, in religion. You adopt a meaning in religion. You can argue if religion is puerile or whatever, but definitely people who believe, people who have faith, they have a sense of meaning. So sometimes meaning requires delusion or fantasy, and that is exactly the narcissist's weapon. The narcissist weaponizes fantasy. He gives you the impression that the fantasy will give you meaning. Because we use fantasy, healthy people, normal people, we use narratives, we use stories, we use fantasies to create meaning. So the narcissist comes to you and says, here's a fantasy, here's a narrative, use this to create meaning and forget all the other meanings. And your ability to create meaning outside your shared fantasy is eradicated. We'll talk about this tomorrow. This is the shared fantasy, which is mind-boggling. Number 5, you gain no credit with people. Remember, these are the sentences that the narcissist kind of poisons your mind with. He destroys. He destroys, you see why you cannot use the, he destroys your internal assumptions about the world. He destroys everything you've believed about the world, about yourself in the world, your place in the world, other people. He destroys all this. So one of the things he convinces you is that you gain no credit with people. When you behave well, it's meaningless. It means nothing. You're a sucker. You're a patsy. Even when you do behave well, this credit is forgotten and ignored. People hate to feel indebted. If you help people, they hate you. If you give gifts to people, they hate you. Because they hate to be the recipients. And so on and so forth. He convinces you of that. Number 6, reality, he says to you, is not a shared experience. It's not a shared experience. Each person is to his own or her. Each one of us is on her own or on his own. We are all solipsistic. We're all floating in space, totally isolated. The narcissist destroys what we call the intersubjective space. The intersubjective space is the imaginary space or metaphorical space where the minds meet, minds of people meet. When I'm talking to you, between us, there is an imaginary intersubjective space. I'm talking to you, your brain absorbs what I'm saying. Hopefully, to some extent, I'm able to convey the same meanings and so on. So what the narcissist does, he destroys the intersubjective space by isolating you physically. He isolates you from your friends, from your family, from your social network. He isolates, but then he begins to isolate you psychologically. By isolating you, destroying the intersubjective space, he then gains control over you. You're enfeebled, you're weakened, you're vulnerable, you're susceptible, and he takes over you. Because now there is no bridge left. He burns the intersubjective bridge, and you're all alone. Most existentially alone that you have ever felt in your life. And what do you do when you're existentially alone and there's someone next to you? You reach out, you lurch, you cling, you know. Because there's nothing more terrifying than being truly, totally, utterly, cosmically, existentially alone. So the narcissist is there and he becomes your life raft. It's like a Titanic, you know. Titanic has sunk, he becomes your life raft. Okay. Number 7, he tells you being alone is often way better and safer than being together with other people except me. So he says, don't be with other people. It's not safe. It's not good also. It's a bad experience. You can be with me, but otherwise isolate yourself because being alone is preferable to this. They're great philosophers of loneliness. Narcissism as a philosophy is the philosophy of solipsism. It's a philosophy of loneliness. The narcissist says, I am the only subject in the world. The only subjective experience is mine. I'm the only mind. There's no other mind. I'm the only mind. Everyone around me, it becomes converted into elements in my mind, into an internal object, into a figment. I'm going to snapshot you. I'm going to take a snapshot of you. And the snapshot is a reality. So it is my mind that includes everything. Now, just to take a break. In psychosis, we have a clinical feature of psychosis known as hyperreflexivity. Hyperreflexivity is when the mind of the psychotic expands outward, like a supernova, expands outward and consumes the world. That's why the psychotic cannot tell the difference between internal objects and external objects. The psychotic, the person with psychotic disorder, the person with psychosis, like schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is one type of psychotic disorder, there are others. So, this kind of person, he has a voice in his mind. There's a voice in his mind. The psychotic believes that the voice is coming from there. So he confuses an internal object, the voice, with an external object. He has an image in his mind. It's an image of a wrathful, terrifying God. He thinks the God is there, about to kill him and consume him. And he insists that it's there. There's a confusion between internal and external. Same happens in narcissism. In psychosis, hyperreflexivity is the confusion of internal objects with external objects. In narcissism, it's the confusion of external objects with internal objects. Whereas a psychotic would say, this image is not in my mind, it's there. The narcissist would say, this image is not there, it's in my mind. It's mirror image of classical psychosis. So he tries to convince you to believe the same. He tells you, you should be alone, you should be lonely because I'm the only real thing. I'm the only real thing. If you want to stick to reality, stick with me. The next sentence is, no one deserves love, no one deserves love, and few, if any, are lovable. He takes away your lovability. He convinces you actually that he's the only one capable of loving you, that you're in principle not lovable. What he does, he creates in you what we call internalized bad object. Again, because he has an internalized bad object. You remember? The narcissist uses you to reflect himself, to experience himself. Narcissist experiences himself, his absent self, through you. I'm going to repeat this sentence because I like the sound of my voice. Narcissists experience their absent self through you. Every dynamic inside the narcissist is thrown, projected onto you, and you own it. And this process is known as projective identification. So, one of these dynamics is lovability. The narcissist has an internalized bad object. It's a group of voices, a cluster of introjects of voices, and the voices say, you are ugly, you are stupid, you're unworthy, you can never be loved, you're not lovable. This is the internalized bad object of the narcissist. And he wants you to experience this internal bad object. He wants to experience himself through you. So he gives you this bad object. He hands over his toxicity. Remember how I started? He hands over the toxicity. He hands you this bad object, and you begin to believe that you are not lovable. We are talking now not in the love bombing phase. We're talking about the shared fantasy after the love bombing. Love bombing is like baiting you. Love bombing is to bait you. Once you're inducted into the shared fantasy, the day-to-day life, the grind of the shared fantasy, at that point, leading to devaluation, the narcissist infects you, contaminates you with a bad internalized object. By the way, the clinical term in the 30s, Skopje, was not bad internalized object. It was, amazingly, primitive superego. It's interesting. It's another topic for another lecture. Okay, 9. You cannot trust yourself. You cannot trust your judgment. You cannot trust your reality testing. And you cannot trust your self-love. This is gaslighting. But the narcissist doesn't do it intentionally. He doesn't say, okay, stage 9, I'm stage 9, today I am going to gaslight her. It emanates. It's an emanation. You know? It's like an apparition. It's like miasma. It comes out. The narcissist exudes narcissism. The narcissist does not impose narcissism. The narcissist does not leverage narcissism. The narcissism doesn't weaponize narcissism. That is a psychopath. Psychopaths do this. The narcissist exudes narcissism. It's like ambient, atmospheric. And you're captured in this miasma. You're breathing the toxic gases. That's more or less the experience. And finally, if I find the page, finally, then remember these are sentences that the narcissist inculcates in you. Narcissist embeds these sentences in you. Tomorrow we'll go deeper. Number 10, there's always a way to commit wrong and evil deeds because such actions are goal-oriented. Regret, remorse, guilt, shame, empathy, and conscience are contemptible weaknesses and vulnerabilities. This particular indoctrination, this particular element of brainwashing is more typical of what we call malignant narcissists. Malignant narcissist is a narcissist who is also a psychopath and also a sadist. So he is diagnosed, a clinical narcissist, clinical psychopath. Not like dark personality. It's not a dark personality. Because we have a dark tetrad. Dark tetrad personality is subclinical narcissist, subclinical psychopath, sadist, and Machiavellian. I'm not talking about this. A malignant narcissist, first described by Otto Kernberg, is a narcissist who is clinically a psychopath, is also clinically a sadist. And this kind of narcissist is likely to use this last sentence that I mentioned. I apologize, but each lecture would be 3 hours, you know that? Oh, okay. I'm going now to mention 6 pitfalls, 6 errors, 6 mistakes that victims make. And then I'm going to read to you a section from the DSM, and I'm going to say goodbye. Okay? Here are the mistakes. Number 1, victims engage in what we call a morality play. In the medieval ages, Middle Ages, there was a type of theater that was called the morality play. Morality play was good versus evil, the devil versus God. And so victims engage in a morality play. I'm an angel. I'm an empath. I'm blemishless. I'm impeccable. I'm immaculate. I'm the Virgin Mary. The narcissist is a demon. He is irredeemable. He is horrible. I had nothing to do with what happened to me. I contributed nothing. I am angelic. This is a morality play. The narcissist is all bad and the victim is all good. And it also involves what we call a splitting defense. A splitting defense is an infantile defense mechanism, typical of children up to age 2 years old. And in a splitting defense, we divide the world into black and white, bad and good, all bad, all good, all black, all white, all right, all wrong. Now, do you know who engages in splitting defense? Do you know who typically uses splitting defense? A narcissist. It's a narcissistic thing to say that the narcissist is all bad and you are all good. That's exactly what narcissists do. It's a splitting defense. The next mistake is self-importance. Self-importance, self-aggrandizement, empath. The empath movement is a prime example of this. I'm special. I'm unique. I'm on a cosmic mission. I'm fighting evil. I'm redeeming the world. I'm healing. I'm this, I'm that. This is self-aggrandizement. And it gives rise to the reasonable speculation that many of these people are actually covert narcissists, in my view. So self-aggrandizement. Number 3, shunning responsibility. Shunning responsibility, ironically, by aggrandizing the narcissist. He was so powerful. He was so perfectly evil. He was a force of nature. Who could have resisted him? Who could have fought with him? I was a victim of a force of nature. I was a victim of a cataclysmic event. The narcissist, so inflating the narcissist out of proportion in order to minimize your own accountability, responsibility, and contribution to what has happened to you, starting with your mate selection. So the next thing is the belief, the self-aggrandizing belief, that you are chosen as a victim, that you were chosen somehow, that you are special somehow because you are unusually benign or caring or loving or empathic and compassionate and immaculate and what have you. The narcissist chose you because of these positive qualities. He was envious of you because he is not and he wants to be. Nothing could be further from the truth. Last thing the narcissist wants to be is empathic and kind. That's a no-no. That's a weakness. That's for suckers and so on. And definitely the narcissist couldn't care less if you're empathic or not. Narcissists very often team up with other narcissists and with psychopaths. They couldn't care less about empathy. So to say that you were chosen, that it was not an accident or a coincidence or a mishap or the outcome of your bad judgment, and in some cases, stupidity. To say that you were chosen because of your specialness and uniqueness is a narcissistic defense, and also happens to be counterfactual, unreal, not true. Next strategy, these are all dysfunctional ways of coping with victimhood. Dysfunctional ways of coping with the fact that you've been victimized. Indeed, the next dysfunctional way is making yourself a victim, a perpetual victim, a professional victim. Competitive victimhood. My abuser was much worse than your abuser. Oh, you don't know what I suffered. You suffered nothing. It's competitive victimhood. You know? Signaling victimhood and making victimhood your identity. You have been victimized. That doesn't make you a victim. A victim is an identity. Being victimized is an event or a process. It's not who you are. So victimhood is a dysfunctional way to react. Regressive infantilization. I'm a baby in the woods. I'm a child. I'm very naive. I'm very innocent. I didn't know what was done to me. So infantilization. All these are dysfunctional ways of reacting to narcissistic abuse. The victims of narcissistic abuse, and they are victims, they're being victimized, no question. They react in these ways, and none of them is a good thing. None of these ways is a good thing. The truth is that victims of narcissistic abuse have made stupid choices, have denied and repressed their own intuition, and they had a gut instinct, which they chosen to ignore. The truth is that victims of narcissistic abuse, in the majority of cases, are either constitutionally, structurally vulnerable, so they are, for example, codependents or people with borderline personality disorder and so on, or they have been going through a vulnerable phase in their lives, immediately after a divorce or the loss of a loved one, so there was a vulnerability involved there. The truth is that the victim of narcissistic abuse is interchangeable, utterly replaceable, a mere service provider, end of story. Nothing more elevated or hallowed or amazing or romantic. It's a business transaction. Narcissists are transactional. We'll discuss the transaction tomorrow, but you, as a victim of narcissistic abuse, you fulfilled a role. It was kind of a role play. You fulfilled a function. And the minute your function was over in the shared fantasy, you were over as well. And you have never meant anything to the narcissist beyond what I've just said. A service provider. Do you care whether your internet service provider is empathic and kind and compassionate? Do you care whether the guy who maintains your refrigerator is a nice guy? Or not really. Service providers are fungible. They're commodities. You have been commoditized and commodified. No one can hear this. You know, people find it very difficult to accept this because it takes away their sense of who they are. When you are you, it makes you special, to yourself at least, and usually to other people. So if I'm telling you you're not special, you're totally interchangeable, fungible, replaceable, a commodity, so many grains of rice, nothing. Here today, gone tomorrow, easily replaceable. It takes away not only, it's not only a narcissistic injury, like, oh my God, I'm not special. It takes away your core identity. Because if I'm not special, if I'm not outstanding, if I'm not unique in some way, if I'm not noticeable, if I'm not being seen, then I'm not. Don't forget, to be seen is a survival strategy. If you are a newborn and you are not seen by your mother, your life expectancy is very short. You need to be seen. The first thing a baby does is attracting the mother's attention. It's the first thing. Any mother would tell you. Attracting the mother's attention. Moving, smiling, these are called behavioral cues. So providing cues. Conditioning the mother, in effect. Creating conditioning. And so the need to be seen is by far the most crucial aspect of human psychology. By far. And so you need to be seen, and I'm telling you, you were not seen. You were not seen by the narcissist, ever. And so this is not only shocking, it's threatening. It's a threatening message. And that's why victims go online and say, of course I was seen, I was chosen. He wanted me because I was empathic, or drop dead gorgeous, or whatever. Yeah, drop dead gorgeous. You drop dead, he was gorgeous. So these are difficult truths that victims of narcissistic abuse and clinicians who work with victims have to assimilate. Whenever we're exposed to trauma, or less than trauma, we have narcissistic defenses. Every human being, healthy, normal human being, has narcissistic defenses. Every human being consumes narcissistic supply, believe it or not. Every human being experiences narcissistic injuries. These are not unique to narcissists. Every human being has this. Every human being self-supplies. You know, when you self-soothe, I'm great, I'm good, I'm okay, I will be okay. These are all narcissistic defenses. Narcissism simply means the self, the ego. So it means self-directed. When you're attacked this way, when I'm telling you you're a service provider, you're nobody, you're nothing, you're replaceable like this, your narcissistic defenses kick in. And you begin to aggrandize, to self-aggrandize. You begin to falsify reality. You begin to anything, just not to feel that you were not seen, which is exactly what the narcissist does to you. And that is the big betrayal. Because the one thing you can expect from someone who claims to love you, or claims to be your friend, or even claims to share a workspace with you, the minimum you can expect is to be seen, to be noticed somehow, to be acknowledged. And the narcissist never ever gives you this. It's one of the major control instruments of the narcissist. Okay, we are reaching the end. As you can see, you can never trust a narcissist. We are reaching the end, and right. And the end is I'm going to read you the text of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual regarding narcissistic personality disorder, but it's a special text. I'll explain to you the background. In 2010 and 2011, the committee of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the committee that was writing the 5th edition. So each committee focused on a specific disorder. So they had a committee for narcissistic personality disorder. There was Gunderson and Roningstam and many others. And they decided to eliminate narcissistic personality disorder from the DSM-5. So their recommendation was narcissistic personality disorder is a form of psychopathy. So let's subsume it under psychopathy. There were scholars like Robert Hare and others who recommended to consider narcissistic personality disorder as an aspect or manifestation of psychopathy. Of course, it's almost completely wrong because it ignores the vulnerable aspects of narcissism, which do not exist at all in psychopathy. So the whole orientation was completely wrong. The covert narcissist, there's no such thing in psychopathy. So the whole orientation was wrong. But never mind that. So this was 2010, 2011, and then they reconsidered and so on. And finally there was a big fight. When you have two clinicians, you have three opinions. When you have three opinions, it's a big fight. And they decided to compromise. Committees compromised. So we got ourselves a camel. You know that a camel is a horse designed by committee. Yeah? So we got ourselves a camel, and we got 2 texts, 2 diagnostic texts for narcissistic personality disorder. And today, in the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, text revision, published in 2022, you have 2 diagnostic texts for narcissistic personality disorder. You have 1 text copy-pasted from the egregiously outdated and old-fashioned DSM-4. Most of this knowledge is completely wrong. And you have another text. It is called the alternative model. It's page 881 in the text revision. And the alternative model is a set of diagnostic descriptions, dimensional descriptions, of narcissistic personality disorder. Now, for insurance purposes, when you as a therapist, you want to charge the patient, you love to charge the patient, and you want to get reimbursed by the insurance, so you use the DSM-4 criteria because they are a bullet list. There's a bullet list of criteria, so it's easy for insurance. But when you want to treat the patient, or work with the patient, or have an alliance with the patient, or do anything with the patient, you work with the alternative model, not with the DSM-4 bullet list. And today I'm going to read to you the alternative model. It's only 53 pages, so I'm kidding. I am kidding. You need to get used to my sense of humor, or some of you at a certain age group may have heart attacks. I'm drooling, I'm getting old is not fun. Okay. No, because I cannot over. This is fast becoming my personal enemy. I'm going to read to you the alternative model, not all of it. It's seriously long, but I'm going to read to you some segments from the alternative model of narcissistic personality disorder, which does reflect the current state of knowledge, more or less, let us not exaggerate, but it's good, much better than the DSM-4. And then we say goodbye, and tomorrow we dive into the Mariana Trench of the shared fantasy. Here is what the DSM-5 text revision has to say in the alternative model, the real diagnostic criteria, not for insurance and not for the pharmaceutical companies. The following criteria must be met to diagnose narcissistic personality disorder. Now I'm skipping about 70% of the text. Moderate or greater impairment in personality functioning manifested by characteristic difficulties in 2 or more of the following areas. Number 1, empathy. Impaired ability to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. Excessively attuned to reactions of others, but only if perceived as relevant to self. Over or underestimation of own effects on others. I want to comment here that the narcissist clinically does not have a self. There's a disruption in the formation of a self in early childhood. So self here is a bit metaphorical. It's not exactly the construct. Yeah? Another thing I want to comment is that narcissists and psychopaths do possess empathy. They definitely possess empathy. They possess 2 components of empathy, reflexive empathy and cognitive empathy. I put the 2 together and I dubbed it cold, like brr, empathy. They don't have affective empathy. They don't have emotional empathy. So let me give you an example. It's a joke that I recently said in an interview. A narcissist, a psychopath, and who else? Narcissist, a psychopath, and someone enter a bar. A narcissist, a psychopath, and a healthy person enter a bar. Okay? It's like the start of a bad joke. And there's a woman crying, and they're all men. There's a woman crying in the corner. She's crying her heart out, and so on. So here are the reactions of each of these 3. The healthy person, who is possessed of reflexive empathy, cognitive empathy, and emotional, affective empathy, yes? He has full-fledged empathy. So the healthy person will go through the phases. First, she's crying, he will do this with his face. There will be change in microfacial expressions. That's documented, by the way. There are videos that document this and so on. So this is reflexive empathy. Then cognitive empathy. He will say, that's the healthy person. The healthy person will say, oh, she's crying, she must be sad. So it's not only a healthy person, but it's clearly a genius. Then, this is the cognitive empathy. Then the third level is the affective or emotional empathy. The healthy person would say, she's crying, she's sad, oh, I feel sad for her. I want to comfort her. I mean, neutrally. I don't want anything from her, but I just want her to stop crying. I don't want her to be sad, because it makes me sad also to see her, this way. That's empathy. Now, there are big debates, empathy, yes, empathy. I'm not going to this. That's another seminar. The narcissist looks at the crying woman. He's a male, heterosexual male, even somatic. He looks at the woman and he says, so reflexive, he has reflexive empathy. Narcissists have reflexive empathy. They will react with the face. Then the narcissist's cognition will kick in. And he will say, she is crying, she must be sad. Up until now, there is total parity between healthy and narcissists. However, there's no emotional component, no affective component. The next stage, where emotions should have arisen, the narcissist would say, she's contemptible, she's disgusting, she's weak. But it's a great opportunity to recruit her to my new shared fantasy. So this is the narcissist. And the psychopath would look at the woman, and the psychopath would say, again, reflexive empathy. Some psychopaths have it, some not. Some psychopaths don't have reflexive empathy. They have like poker face. We call it reduced affect display. So some psychopaths have RAD, reduced affect display. They don't show anything on the face. Anyone who's been to prison knows that people, you cannot read them. So he would look at her, maybe react facially, maybe not. Cognitively, he would say, she's crying, she's sad. There's no emotional component, no affective reaction. And where enough emotional component should have been, the psychopath would say, great, she's vulnerable, I can have sex with her. Or, oh my God, she's crying and she is not paying attention to her wallet. It's a great chance to take her purse. So these are the differences. They do have empathy. But as you can see, the empathy plays differently and different components are at play. Yeah? So I'm just correcting some of the elements in the DSM because it's not fully up to scratch. I'm continuing, DSM. The narcissist finds it difficult to identify with the emotions and needs of others, but it is very attuned to their reactions when they are relevant to himself. This is called empathy, actually. Consequently, the narcissist overestimates the effect that he has on others or underestimates the effect that he has on others. Intimacy. Relationships are largely superficial, relationships with narcissists are largely superficial and they exist to serve self-esteem regulation. Mutuality is constrained by little genuine interest in others' experiences and predominance of a need for personal gain. No kidding. The narcissist relationships are self-serving and therefore shallow and superficial. They are centered around and geared at the regulation of his self-esteem. The narcissist is not genuinely interested in his intimate partner's experiences. The narcissist emphasizes his need for personal gain. These twin fixtures of the narcissist relationships render them one-sided. No mutuality and no reciprocity. We have finished the overview of the narcissist to the best of my ability. I could dedicate 10 additional seminars to psychology of the narcissist, but that's not the content of this seminar. Tomorrow, we are going, as I said, I'm reminding you, we're going to divide it into two parts. The first part is a shared fantasy. You will be invited to go with me deeper and deeper, never to emerge. And the second part is what to do when you are trapped in a shared fantasy and cannot exit, subjectively or objectively. You're trapped, what to do. There'll be the tomorrow, the day after that, and the day after the day after that. Oh, that was long. These 2 days will be dedicated to having exited the shared fantasy and how to cope with the damage done to you and with internal dynamics that are operating in you, for example, grief, and how to heal and recover yourself, all based on studies. I want to recommend this book to you. It is old. It is 2012, Handbook of Narcissism and Narcissistic Personality Disorder. The editors are Campbell, which is the preeminent scholar on narcissism. It is 2012, but strangely, I couldn't find any mistakes in it. But it's like an echo from when we were speculating. So they were speculating in 2012. They were saying, for example, we think that there are no coverts and overts. We think that every narcissist is covert and overt. So in this book, it's a speculation. But we know today that it is true. So it's like time travel to see how today's thinking has emerged. But there's no mistake in the book. I've read it cover to cover, and I've also defaced it, of course, because I feel entitled to do so. I defaced it with numerous, notes and so on. So if you buy this thing, you're not mistaken. You'll not be misled in any way. But a lot of the speculations there became completely true. It's fascinating in my view. It's the only authoritative text on narcissism that I know. I don't know of any other authoritative text, unfortunately. Pretty shocking in my view. That's it. And this is my book, Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sam Vaknin, and I'm the author of Malignant Self-Love, Narcissism Revisited. Right? And that's it for today. It's been a pleasure to torture you. And yeah, I'm open to questions and answers. You don't have to stay here if you are not interested to, yeah. Lydia, mic, please. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock here. Yeah.
Hello.
You're worse than me.
Professor Vaknin, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you in person, meet you finally after having watched for years your videos and learned a lot, and they helped a lot in my therapy process and recovery. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and happy to be with you all and talking to you. I'm excited. I have two questions from the content. Narcissist makes one mummy, like tries to create a mummy in the other, and also infantilizes.
He also?
He also infantilizes. So
yes.
It's like two things. Yeah. How can the two things be together?
I will explain.
My first question.
This is the dual mothership. Dual mothership I will explain tomorrow.
Okay. Okay. The second question, Professor Vaknin, is when mothers or fathers are narcissistic, for example, how do they choose which children they want to use as supply? Does birth order, for example, matter? Because I'm the last born, for example, and I think I'm curious how my parents, let's say, choose, okay, let's make this child, not the other, the supply.
So narcissistic parents use what I called projective splitting. The splitting is dividing everything to all bad and all good. And projection is when you attribute things inside you to other people. When there is something, just destroy the phone and that's it. Why you? Yeah. Just want me to step on it? At your service. Projection is when you have parts in you that you don't like, parts of you that you reject, parts of you that feel alien to you, or parts of you that negate your self-concept. For example, you think you're a good person, but there's a part of you that is evil. So you reject this part. You think you're heterosexual, but there's a part of you that is actually homosexual. You're latent homosexual. So you reject this part. So you take these parts and you attribute them to other people. You say, I'm not stingy, he's stingy. I'm a good person, he's a bad person. I'm not angry, he's angry. So you project. Projective splitting is when the parents take the parts that they dislike about themselves and attribute these parts to a child, to a specific child. That child becomes the scapegoat. Yeah? So this child becomes the repository of all the parts of the parent that the parent rejected, that the parent doesn't like about himself or herself. At the same time, the narcissistic parent takes the parts that he likes about himself and he attributes these parts to another child. So it's like the narcissistic parent splits himself or herself in two. I like myself here, or I dislike myself here. The part that I like about myself belongs to this child. The part that I hate belongs to this child. This is projective splitting, and that gives rise to the dynamic of scapegoat and golden child. Just let me answer your question. So we know that in some ways, very limited ways, firstborns enjoy a special status in the family. And because they enjoy a special status, they have a higher probability of developing narcissism. Kohut called it the grandiose self. So, for example, the firstborns feel more entitled. They feel more entitled. They are more idolized. There is a bigger chance, bigger risk of developing narcissism. However, in studies that we made of golden children and scapegoats, we did not find a pattern. And there were a few studies, which, by the way, I mentioned in this book, there are a few studies where actually the lastborn became the golden child, not the firstborn. And the firstborn became the object of demands and expectations. So the firstborn was instrumentalized, became an instrument. The parent had wishes and dreams, and the parent failed. So the parent wants the first child to realize these wishes, to realize these dreams, instrumentalize or parentifies the first child, and so on. And this gives rise to narcissism, of course, and so on. But it seems that the last child is more likely, actually, to end up as a golden child. Again, contra to everything you hear online. If you go to the Bible, they actually agree with you with this, because it is the last child in the Bible that is the golden child. Benjamin is the last child, and is the golden child. The last child in the family, the smallest, the youngest, is usually become the... But we don't have, at this stage, we don't have sufficient studies to say anything with any certainty. We only know that firstborns have a higher IQ, they feel more entitled, they bear the expectations and demands of the parent, and they're more likely to develop narcissism. This we know. However, we don't know much more than this. And we have 1 or 2 studies about last children becoming golden children. But it's not serious. I don't take these studies too seriously.
So, last thing, Professor Vaknin. So,
Sam, call me Sam. Professor Vaknin is
okay.
a seminar will take
Sam.
6 days.
Okay, yeah. Sam. Wow, Sam. Nice. Sam. So, do I understand correctly? The firstborn child is more likely to be the source of supply for the parents.
Exactly. Not only source of supply, but the love is conditional. The love is performative. In other words, I'm going to love you if you perform. The relationship with the first child is performance-based, transactional. I'm going to love you if you perform. What do you need to do? You need to realize my dreams. You need to realize my wishes. You need to give me supply. You need to make me proud. You need to accomplish things. You need to become famous. You need to become rich. You know. But only then I'm going to love you. My love is conditioned on your performance. Of course, these kind of children, high likelihood, become narcissists, and their love is also transactional. I'm going to love you if you give me services. I'm going to love you if you give me supply. I'm going to love you if you give me sex. So As I said at the beginning, whatever happens to the narcissist, he wants you to experience. You know? So he experienced conditional love, he wants you to experience. It's called contingent. The clinical term is contingent love.
So we call firstborns as scapegoats, right?
Yeah, but I think there are other people who want to...
Sorry, the firstborns are scapegoats then. Can we say firstborns?
No, we don't call it a scapegoat. It's, we don't have sufficient data who becomes a scapegoat, except 2 studies that show that the last born... scapegoat, yes. The first child is a scapegoat. Yes, sorry. You're right. Yes. Sorry, my mistake. I was thinking about golden child. I'm a firstborn, by the way.
Hello, Sam. My name is Marie. I have a question referring to a video of yours. It's called the Femme Fatale or Versus Mother video. Or actually, I think it's in a few videos you talk around this topic. So if I hear, obviously I'm here with my boyfriend and out of personal interest, the question. So you talk a lot about the fact that the relationship is always transactional, there is no real love, and what was this third major thing? I forget. Yeah, I'm exchangeable, or the woman or the partner is exchangeable. So, of course, I'm one of these women who hope for a different case, and therefore I was thinking of this video of the Femme Fatale, because there you describe something completely different, and this Femme Fatale mechanism, so to speak, I cannot relate the stuff that you talk about right now to that case, and yeah, maybe this answer is too long, but that is my question, or maybe you speak tomorrow about it.
Narcissists can be the victims of a shared fantasy. Nothing prevents it. The femme fatale creates a shared fantasy where the narcissist is in the role of the victim, if she is with a narcissist. So the fact that you're a narcissist doesn't give you any immunity to a shared fantasy. Actually, many scholars think it's exactly the opposite, because narcissists are prone to fantasy. Narcissism is a fantasy defense. Many scholars say that narcissists are gullible, they're naive, they are much more victimized by con artists and swindlers and scammers, because they think they know everything, they don't need to, you know. So it's easy for a woman, for example, who is psychopathic, or a woman who is narcissistic. It's easy for her to create a shared fantasy and trap or bait the narcissist, and then his dynamics in the shared fantasy are identical to dynamics of a victim. He experiences it differently, the inner experience is different, but the outside outcomes and so on are identical, absolutely identical. This means we do the same thing. I don't know what you do to each other. I don't know which one of you is. I think he's the femme fatale. He is the femme fatale.
Oh, I don't know how to interpret that, but okay, we do more or less the same, in this model, not us, but in this model that you described, and this mechanism, we would do more or less the same to each other. Instead of one way, it would be 2 ways, to put it very simple.
It's usually, in a shared fantasy clinically is what we call folie à deux. It's what used to be called shared psychotic disorder. In a shared psychotic disorder, in a folie à deux, there's one person who is leading, is called the inducer. There's one person who induces the folie à deux, and there's one follower. The person who induces the folie à deux falsifies reality, creates an alternative reality, and the person who is follower accepts the reality, suspends her reality testing. So it's very rare to have equal position, to be equipotent in a shared fantasy.
Okay, but sorry, I have to ask one more question. So if there's this narcissist and he meets a femme fatale, and it is the kind of relationship you're speaking about in this video, that he does everything for this woman, not only the little stuff, not transactional. So in that case, he is not creating the shared fantasy, but the woman or the partner.
It's usually very clear who is creating the shared fantasy, because it is the person imposing her reality or his reality on the other.
This would mean that a femme fatale woman can never be a victim of narcissistic abuse, in my logic.
I think this is not a counseling session.
Okay.
I'd be delighted to give you counseling, but I don't think that's the forum.
Okay.
But maybe you will have a better insight. Maybe you'll have a better insight after tomorrow, when we go deeper into the shared fantasy. in the dynamics.
Hi, and thank you. I'm following you for years. I'm really happy to be here.
And you survived.
Yes.
Wow, impressive.
And the first part of the seminar also. Thank you. So my understanding was that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because narcissists use the same relationship template with everyone, maybe the partner doesn't feel actually that special, and that's contributing to the perception that he cheats. And as a defensive grandiosity, in a way, is this a way narcissism became contagious?
No, narcissism is contagious from the very first few seconds.
Oh.
Because to continue to interact with the narcissist after the first 30 seconds, you need to suspend your reality judgment. You need to deny and repress the negative, the uncanny valley, the negative reaction that you have. So from the first second, you're under the narcissist's control in the sense that you suppress your reality. The shared fantasy is much more complex than this. I think many of these questions, better ask them after the segment on the shared fantasy, because maybe they're answered, and if they're not, then we can tackle them. But also people will have a lot more tools to understand, okay?
So here,
Oh, hello.
little one. Thank you very much for a lot of videos. I think that they saved my life and my relation and self-love somehow. I heard Leslie your video about the first signs, how you can recognize narcissist. But I would like to know a little bit more if, for example, covert narcissist and psychopath, are they so likely to recognize on the first sight? Because it's a little bit, I know that's a huge problem for many of us to recognize of it. Covert narcissist, or you wrote me in the mail that they have, every type of narcissist has subtle signs, body language and so on, but about psychopaths, so is this the same?
No, this is not a seminar dedicated to psychopaths. Psychopaths are very good actors.
Mm-hmm.
And with the psychopath, studies show that you can be deceived, even for long periods of time. But all the studies about narcissists are very clear. Within the first 30 seconds, you develop negative impressions, but then you report positive impressions. And this discrepancy between how you really feel and what you report, self-reporting, is very was, when the book was written, was very difficult to explain, but today we think it is cognitive dissonance. You are repressing it, denying it, reframing it. You're saying something's wrong with me, or it's not fair to criticize someone after 30 seconds, or I should give him a second chance. Or I'm so lonely, let me compromise. Or, you know, I'm so sex-starved, and it looks good, etc. So there are many dynamics inside you that are attempting to resolve the dissonance at your expense. At your expense. All narcissists, overt and covert, exude the signals, give off the signals. There was no difference when the studies were conducted. So there were studies with Facebook photographs. I want to understand when I say studies, I want you to understand what I mean. A group of people were shown Facebook photos, single photo, one photo, not moving, not photo. Then they were asked, is this a narcissist or not? And they said, this is a narcissist. And they were shown thousands of photos. It's one study, example. They were shown thousands of photos. And they are, let's say they identified, for discussion's sake, 150 narcissists. The people in the photos were subjected to testing, psychological testing, and were diagnosed already as narcissists or non-narcissists. The correlation was very high. Zero, in one study it was 0.81. It's exceedingly high correlation. Anyone who knows statistics, very high correlation. It means that the people who are not trained, they're not clinicians, they did not conduct any tests, they did not meet the people, based on a single photograph, they were as accurate as diagnostician with a psychological test. As accurate. When people were shown a video of 30 seconds, we had the same results. When people were shown email, we had the same results. So it seems that people are able to diagnose narcissists within split seconds. I told you there's a scholar in Harvard, she says 3 seconds. So why almost universally people report that the first impressions of narcissists were very good, when we know for sure that they're able to identify a narcissist like that within seconds? They're denying, they're reframing, there's a process going, what we call a secondary process. There's a secondary process going on. And this has a lot to do with neediness or with, you know, and so on. Also, yes, desperation and so on. So
here is another question. I've never met you. I have followed you absolutely all the time. I think extensively. I cannot stop thinking. And I have a quite unique, quickly I'll tell you, a unique experience. I was the first girlfriend of the narcissist. And he was younger than my own children, but difficult. My children at the time that I was going through the difficulty with it, they were tolerant for a while. And then, as my older son said, Lawrence has changed his name and we don't know what it is, which I thought was very funny and clever. They're nice boys. Anyway, I was incredibly isolated and the only person I was listening to was you, Sam. It's kind of sad,
so
really.
you were doubly isolated.
Sorry?
So you were doubly isolated.
No, don't insult yourself.
Okay.
You see, I had a narcissistic, grandiose narcissistic father, and he was, I identify all the traits. But I just wanted to say, apart from the wonderful content, what is absolutely amazingly wonderful is to see your joy in being with us. It's not just what you say, you clearly love talking to us, and that's wonderful. Just quickly.
Narcissistic supply is fun. What?
It doesn't matter. I don't think there's anything to excuse.
I can't help it.
I can spot emotion. And so just quickly, I developed red spots on my back from cortisol, which I didn't know what it was. I had twice, and I think that was to do with stress from the narcissist. And I actually started to speak in animal voices, like I would make sounds that weren't words. And my children even said to me, "Mummy, you can show your emotions." The other thing was, I just wanted to say something before we got into a relationship. He went out one night. I was actually his landlady. He went out one night, and it was just before his 21st birthday. And he went out, and he had sent a text to me. And he said in that text, and I believe this was honest, only 21. He went out. The police brought him back from the local bridge. I didn't go with him. I told him I didn't think he should go. He should stay and talk. I said, don't go, but I didn't go with him. But anyway, you know what he said? And I've never forgotten it. He said, when people show me love and compassion, I feel lonely and emotionally cold. And I think that was 1,000% the truth. That was the defense of a child who never felt loved. His mother told him that she took the morning after pill and it hadn't worked. I mean, like she wanted to kill him. She went to the supermarket and she forgot he was with her and didn't bring him back. He made his own meals when he was 5. And of course, he fed all that to me as facts. And then eventually, when I took his defense, when he met the new girlfriend, and I said, why is she bad naming me? Well, he said, you said bad things about my mother, and you never met her. And then I knew he was giving back to me all his negativity, which he had voiced through me, because his new girlfriend, being his age, will meet his mother, and I never will. So I understood everything from watching, from listening, from analyzing. And it is absolutely the most terrible thing I've ever experienced. And I experienced, I think, what one of my tenants said is depression. I had never experienced depression before. I came from a family, my father was a narcissist, but we had an enormous sense of humor. And I think a sense of humor can keep you trapped, but it does stop you being rigid and can help you from being mentally ill.
Thank you.
You know?
I hope that by...
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
Super quick, just the photographs, were they all positioned, each person was positioned in exactly the same stance, like mugshots?
A maternal figure. They will convert you into a maternal figure. The maternal figure will fit you.
No, in the Facebook thing.
Oh.
Were they all...
No, different Facebook photos. Just randomly selected Facebook photos. Not same.
Hello, Sam. I'm the Turkish filmmaker who's making a film from your
Thank you for coming.
videos. So I'm an academic as well, and I'm an anthropologist, but I find this fascinating. And when you say that actually clinically diagnosed narcissism is much less than those with narcissistic traits, does this mean most of the abuse is actually happening by those with narcissistic traits, if clinically diagnosed narcissists are actually a rare species? And then the second question, which is a question I think you're gonna like, is about sex. And if most narcissists are autoerotic, and if most of them are addicted to sex, does this mean they're addicted to having sex to themselves? So these two...
I'll start with the second question. This will be the last question because these two gentlemen, I'm abusing them. Okay, but these two gentlemen are, I have to think of their... Okay, I will answer these two, this one, and that's it. I didn't say that most narcissists are into sex. On the very contrary, I said that cerebral narcissists are asexual. Cerebral narcissists are not into sex. Somatic narcissists are also not into sex, but they're into sexual conquest. If the emphasis is on sex, the emphasis could be on bodybuilding or athletic accomplishments. The use of the body. If their use of the body is sex-oriented, then they would be hypersexed. Whereas cerebral narcissists are essentially hyposexed or actually asexual, asexed, celibate. Remind me, what was your first question? The first question. Oh, yes. So the answer to your question is the second question, just to complete it, is that sexual attraction in narcissism is exclusively to one's own body. The attraction could be mediated via medium, could be mediated via pornography, via partner, So the attraction could be mediated, but it's exclusively to one's own body. But the complication is it's attraction to one's own body as perceived by others. Again, the narcissist derives all ego, what is called ego functions, derives all internal dynamics from the outside. The narcissist imports his mind from the outside. It's a hive mind. So all the functions are brought from the outside and internalized, and then they operate. Similarly with sex. To be attracted to himself sexually, the narcissist needs to have someone attracted to him. Someone is attracted to him, he says, she's attracted to me, it means I'm attractive, now I can be attracted to myself. How will I do that? I can masturbate with her body, or I can just look in her eyes and see that she finds me irresistible, whatever, whichever way. But this is the role of the partner. That's why the narcissist needs a partner. You can ask, if the narcissist is attracted to his body, why does he need another person? He needs another person because nothing is happening here. Everything is happening outside. He needs the attraction to come from the outside. He is importing the arousal. Even the arousal is coming from outside. Regarding your first question, people with narcissistic style are not abusive in the proactive sense, but they're insensitive, they're exploitative, they're a-holes, they're obnoxious, they're unpleasant, and so if you live with someone like that, it grinds you, it grates on you, it's corrosive, it erodes you, you pay a price. You pay a price in terms of mental health if you share your life with someone like that. It doesn't need to be a pathology. And by the way, the vast majority of abusers, including domestic violence, the vast majority are not mentally ill. It's a myth. They're not mentally ill. They don't have any personality disorder. They're perfectly healthy. They're obsessed with control. They're very controlling. Or they have a perception of justice, which is very distorted and so on. But they're mentally healthy. So you don't have to share your life with a narcissist, or when you are with someone with narcissistic style, it's a highly unpleasant coexistence. But when you are with a narcissist, it's annihilation. It's an extermination camp. It is it's Auschwitz recreated. It's about extermination. That is a massive difference. You cannot make a mistake. If you date someone with narcissistic style, you may come out with a bitter taste. And say, what an idiot, what a jerk, you know. But if you date a narcissist, you're totally disoriented, destabilized, discombobulated, confused. You're lost internally, you're lost externally. It's as if someone catapulted you to outer space, and there's a massive impact there. Even the uncanny valley reaction is very deep, very profound, you know. Because, as I said, the narcissist is an absence. I keep saying in my videos, and it's highly politically incorrect, one day it will cost me my jobs, I keep saying that narcissists are not fully human. They're not fully human because take away empathy, take away empathy. Take away positive emotions. Take away the ability to distinguish fantasy from reality. Take away the ability to recognize the externality and separateness of other people. What is left? What makes us human? This is what makes people human, no? They're empathic, they recognize that other people exist, and they have rights and so on. This is what makes us human. Take away all these elements, someone who cannot experience any positive emotion. Even joy. Narcissists don't experience joy, ever. They experience elation. We have special names. They are so crazy, they are so out there, that we have special names. We had to invent a whole new dictionary. Instead of joy, we don't say narcissistic joy. We say narcissistic elation. You understand? So I had also, in the 80s and 90s, I had to come up with a completely new vocabulary, completely new language, most of which is still used. But there are many others who came up with. Is elation not positive? Sorry? Is elation not positive? No, elation is... elation is yes, it's about... It's not only a power play, but it also has to do with ancient, what is called oceanic feeling. It's ancient replay of... yes, please.
Thank you for all of your work, and thank you for providing us with this seminar. It's a huge pleasure to be here. Since you mentioned Hitchcock, my question is, do you happen to have a list of cinematographic and/or musical depictions of narcissism, both from the point of view of the narcissist and from the point of view of the victims?
I have on my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of fiction and film. So you can find there films, reviews of films, analysis of films, and so on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That was a short one. Disappointing. Thank you all for coming, and see some of you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. I see. Thank you.